Whoa, it's Wulzy. Welcome back to another Thoughts on video. I kind of forgot about this series until I ran a little poll on my community tab. It seems to me like you want a little more of these, so I'm bringing them back for a bit. Building videos win by a mile, but I'll also bring out some request videos soon too. I digress. This is the Thoughts On series, where I basically critique some popping levels in the game, whether rated or not. I've got two levels to look into today, both of which have been recorded by Lev in my icons, which is very kind of him. I could beat these myself since they're both of easy demon difficulty, but it was more convenient that Lev recorded for this video. The levels I'm looking into today are CSQN by Bluskys and STARPUNK by Ferdefunky, two very original levels in their own fashion, but I'm going to cover CSQN first, as at the time I'm recording this, it's not rated, and it's had less coverage by the community. The level did get showcased on Vibrant's channel and on Aeon Airs as part of a weird level video, although I wish it wasn't just labelled as weird, because personally I see this level as a creative take on the modern style. It sticks to the music video that it was inspired by, creatively bringing in backgrounds and custom objects to make it very immersive and linked together. The level follows a very bold colour scheme of orange and black, with a couple of hue-changing pulses that give it some life, alongside the vast range of movements and effects that cover up dead space on the screen very well, giving the level a changing aesthetic so that it stays interesting. The mix of movements, easings and toggled visuals spice up the level a lot and give it some original flair. Bluskys has arranged his structures to his advantage, as there are multiple different segments in one block that act in different ways, which allows him to stick to the song's energy and create that sort of flustered feel in the gameplay, as movements can be stacked to build tension. The whole thing is very stylistic and has chosen very specific assets from the video it's been inspired by to best suit the level's flow. In my opinion, the first half of the level is much more solid than the second half, as it's more strongly connected in its decoration, keeping the same background format with these low opacity rotating and wiggling lines, as well as a very consistent colour scheme and block format. In this part, everything is differentiated very clearly, and the path forward is very clear to see, despite its fast-paced nature in both the visuals and the gameplay. The level begins to fall apart for me at the drop. The structure coverage is noticeably less, which leaves big open spaces around the objects, especially when they're floating and closed off. There could be something else to extend these blocks to the ceiling and the ground, to cover up dead space there, or there could be some saws, as the background isn't dense enough or impressive enough to stand alone without some sort of decoration or filler objects. Bluskys shows in this middle cube that he is capable of using strip decoration nicely, that you can see diagonally shooting from the structures and filling space. If the structures at the drop were more developed, I could see these slipping right in with some variation to get that extra bit of coverage and also make the background less prevalent, because as it stands it's quite harsh, especially when the strips whoosh across the screen very quickly. Any kind of lighting experimentation would work here, for example some low opacity black blocks covering the whole background with gaps left for some air decoration. While this level is fun and light-hearted, I can't help but feel disappointed by the second half, since it takes a step back from the depth established in the beginning, which stacks layers above the background as well as within. This part solely relies on the layering in the background to keep it going, which is definitely a downgrade in quality, not to mention the fact that the backgrounds are quite lame from here on out. The beginning of the level has all sorts of layered movements like arrows, both ahead of the player and transitioning into certain parts, such as the fall at 35%, but this just isn't matched towards the end, as it doesn't have such an impressive variety of assets to keep it interesting. The energy is carried over in the pulses and hue changes, but nothing else. These hue changes are also a bit extreme for my liking too, and it's a shame to have such a unique colour scheme to be taken away at the drop of a hat. Don't get me wrong, this level is very abstract, and I do recognise the effort put into the music sync and the pulses. I just think it's a shame that this level is missing out on its potential, since it's the only level of its kind. I'm definitely going to be looking out for another level by this creator, because the easing choices are spot on for the most part, and I love to see such a bold take on the modern style. Now onto STARPUNK, a level using a banging Luckhash song Walkman that has been rising in the community since my friend Jamattack managed to contact Luckhash and bring him onto Newgrounds. This level was weekly, and it's destined to become a community favourite due to the enticing easy demon difficulty, which some have argued is an overrating. This kind of difficulty gets a level the most traction, as it's just right for a short, challenging experience. This level is easily sight-read, with large stretches of straight flying, orb inputs and sloped platforms that give the player a long time to recover. It's very satisfying to play, as you're often flying around in mid-air with these beautiful layered movement effects in the background, using blending to its advantage as it looks lucid. If you're unaware, ticking blending on a colour channel makes it act like light. When stacking multiple blending objects, the hue and brightness are stacked so that when the strips overlap within these wavy techno style backgrounds, it creates a very nice looking brightness difference, further bringing in that colour depth that is desired in a space themed level like this with such dark backgrounds. This theme is very strong all the way through the level, fusing technology and space by using lots of mini colour changes that allow Ferdy to incorporate lots of fast paced movements, gameplay and little knacks within the designs and decoration that make this level stand out. The beginning part of this level is honestly astonishing, as the block choices here incorporate multiple different shades and tones of the same colours, alongside some invisible blocks that give the level a little bit of shine, which links into the level as a whole with the 3D lines, and the wavy effect when the lines overlap, which I mentioned earlier. As well as this, the edges of the blocks and important objects such as the spikes and arrows are very clearly differentiated from the rest, as they're more saturated and very bright. These invisible blocks give the level a lot of flair, as they don't cluster the visuals at all and work very well on the ceiling and the ground to fill in open spaces there. A common piece of decoration to open the level are the squares that cover the black spaces in the blocks, which look great as they have varied opacities which link in once again with the colour depth. This level stands at a 2-minute 30-second length with lots of tension and good atmosphere created through the different fade times and hue changes in each part, as they're ramped up when the song picks up, leading to the climax where there are lots of fast and flashy pulses. It's worth noting that the saturation hits its peak at the drop of the level, which makes it stand out and feel very climactic and worthwhile. An XL level should definitely have a lot of progression in it, so that the player doesn't travel all that way for nothing. The final part of this level switches up the level's momentum a lot, because there's large scaled up decoration pieces that attempt to fill up the screen, but get drawn back due to the inevitable spaces around. In the open spaces between the structures, there is often only one piece of decoration, whereas elsewhere there was a very high decoration density. The custom background here is made up of spike pillars, which have big gaps between, and honestly they could have had their opacity experimented with, because they're quite prevalent at times, especially with the very extreme blending screen pulses Ferdius went for in between motions of the level. The rotations and movements are way too fast here for my liking too, and the song doesn't match, as it seems to slow down here. The visuals don't reflect the change in the song, despite the scaled up and more spaced out decoration. The big transitions between each significant part of the level are a lot emptier than the rest of the level too, although they do bring in the following part pretty well. The downward transition out of the first drop works pretty well, since the next cube part also has quite an open black background with low opacity detail. This transition would be a lot worse if it intersected two dense parts. Because these transitions are well executed, the level feels very tied together and whole, and each part is memorable by itself. Alongside this, the second build-up is reminiscent of the first, because the pulses and synchronization are pretty similar, but to make this part different, there's a couple of darkening pulses too, which lead on to a slow, spaced out cube section with color loops, which work well together pretty nicely. One more thing that I want to mention that is underlooked in a lot of levels, the block transitions. This level has some great atmosphere nonetheless, but the great transition management adds to it. In each part, the blocks fade and move off screen differently, which is very subtle, but it does improve the energy and aura in certain parts. Very cool. I love STARPUNK because of the theming, originality and colours. Ferdefunky has glowed up a lot since he started creating, and now he's making some masterpiece fan favourite levels. He's definitely a creator to watch, as every level he puts out has a different aura and aesthetic. This level is one of my favourites to come out in recent times, and will definitely stick in my mind for a while. But That brings us to the end of this thoughts on video. I tried fusing 2 in 1 this time. Let me know what you thought of this video format and what you thought of the levels in the comment section. Like and subscribe, blah blah blah. Have a good day.